Imagine walking into a city and accidentally destroying its economy simply because your wealth was beyond anything the world had ever seen before in human history.
That actually happened when one traveler passed through Cairo without invading, threatening, or conquering anyone, yet still shattered Egypt's economy for 12 long years afterward. Prices collapsed, gold lost value overnight, and merchants who depended on stable trade suddenly found themselves ruined by unimaginable generosity flooding the entire market with wealth.
All of it happened because one ruler believed generosity was more important than hoarding wealth, changing economies simply through the scale of his unimaginable fortune and kindness.
His name was Mansa Musa, and historians believe he may have been richer than any king, emperor, billionaire, or ruler humanity has ever known before.
Not merely the richest African ruler or medieval king, but perhaps the single wealthiest human being in all recorded history across every civilization humanity has ever created.
So who exactly was this mysterious ruler? Where did he come from? And how did one man become powerful enough to transform the ancient world forever? Stay with me, because this unbelievable story will completely change how you think about wealth, power, civilization, and the forgotten greatness of the ancient African world. To understand Mansa Musa, you first need to understand the extraordinary world he was born into, because history books rarely describe medieval Africa accurately or completely. In the early 1300s, while Europe struggled through plague, poverty, and endless political chaos, something extraordinary was quietly rising deep within the western coast of Africa. Deep in the continent's heart, a civilization emerged so wealthy and advanced that European kingdoms would have appeared tiny and insignificant by comparison during that era. This was the Mali Empire, one of the largest, richest, and most sophisticated civilizations the world had ever witnessed throughout all of medieval human history.
Stretching across more than 2 million square kilometers, the empire controlled the world's most valuable trade routes, carrying salt, copper, and unimaginable quantities of gold.
Not just small amounts of gold, but nearly half of the entire world's supply, flowing directly through one kingdom, controlled by a single powerful throne. In 1312, Musa Keita ascended the throne and became Mansa Musa, a title meaning King of Kings throughout the powerful and expanding Mali Empire.
He inherited a kingdom already built upon enormous wealth and influence. But what he would eventually do with that power had never happened before, anywhere.
The decisions Mansa Musa would make with his unimaginable fortune would permanently reshape how the known world viewed Africa, power, and wealth forever afterward.
But here is what most people completely misunderstand about Mansa Musa. Because wealth alone has never been enough to make someone truly legendary throughout human history.
History is filled with rich rulers forgotten by time. But Mansa Musa faced a challenge that every powerful empire throughout history eventually confronts, sooner or later.
The real question was not whether Mali possessed wealth, but how Mansa Musa could force the entire world to finally take his empire seriously.
Most of Europe barely knew the Mali Empire existed, while the Arab world only heard mysterious whispers about a distant kingdom drowning in endless gold.
Rumors spread about a ruler beyond the Sahara whose power and wealth sounded almost mythical. But without proof, even greatness can be dismissed as fantasy.
There was another powerful reason behind Mansa Musa's journey, because as a devout Muslim ruler, completing the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca was his religious obligation. For Mansa Musa, the Hajj was not optional or symbolic, but a sacred responsibility connected deeply to faith, identity, leadership, and spiritual devotion before God.
Mansa Musa faced two enormous challenges at once, fulfilling his religious duty while proving to the world that the Mali Empire was undeniably real and powerful.
He could have traveled quietly and humbly across the desert, unnoticed by history, simply completing his pilgrimage without changing the course of the medieval world forever. Instead, Mansa Musa made a decision so extraordinary that its impact would echo across centuries and permanently transform how the world viewed the Mali Empire afterward. He decided his pilgrimage to Mecca would become the greatest public display of wealth the ancient world had ever witnessed before in human civilization.
Picture the impossible sight appearing across the Sahara Desert in 1324, where endless silence and burning heat were suddenly interrupted by something humanity had never witnessed before.
Across the horizon came a gigantic procession, so enormous it looked less like travelers and more like an entire moving city crossing the desert sands together.
Historians recorded nearly 60,000 people traveling together, including soldiers, servants, officials, scholars, and workers, all moving across the desert under one powerful ruler's command.
12,000 personal servants marched in silk and brocade clothing, so luxurious that most kingdoms reserved fabrics like these only for royalty and emperors.
Ahead of Mansa Musa marched hundreds of men carrying massive golden staffs, each one glowing beneath the desert sun like symbols of unimaginable imperial power and wealth.
Behind him traveled 80 camels loaded with enormous amounts of pure gold dust, carrying wealth beyond what entire kingdoms possessed during the medieval age combined together.
The procession stretched so incredibly far across the horizon that travelers standing at the front could not even see those marching far behind them. When the caravan finally reached Cairo, the Egyptian sultan prepared a grand ceremony designed to force every visiting ruler to bow before his throne publicly. Respectfully but firmly, Mansa Musa refused to bow before the sultan, declaring that he would kneel only before God and nobody else on earth. Even the powerful sultan reportedly stayed silent because he immediately understood the extraordinary greatness of the man now standing before him inside that royal court.
And then came the moment that shattered the ancient world's economy, changing the balance of wealth and power across an entire civilization forever afterward. Mansa Musa did not hoard his wealth in Cairo. Instead, he spent it freely, giving away gold with generosity that defied logic and human expectation.
He distributed gold to the poor, paid extraordinary prices in markets, and tipped workers with sums equal to years of income as he traveled through Egypt. The result was catastrophic for the local economy, as gold flooded the market and suddenly lost value across Cairo almost overnight. Prices skyrocketed, and merchants who had built entire livelihoods on stable gold trade suddenly found themselves completely ruined overnight. Cairo's economy took 12 long years to recover from the shock created by a single pilgrimage fueled by overwhelming generosity and wealth. 12 years of recovery followed a single journey, proving how one man's wealth could reshape entire economic systems across an ancient world. And when Mansa Musa finally left Cairo, he tried to repair the damage he had unintentionally caused to the city's fragile medieval economy. Reports suggest he even borrowed gold back at high interest rates, attempting to stabilize prices and restore economic balance across the region. But the true impact of his journey was not economic damage. It was the moment the world finally realized the existence of the Mali Empire. Across the known world, traders, scholars, and rulers began to speak of a kingdom beyond the Sahara, overflowing with unimaginable gold and wealth. Because of this journey, Mansa Musa and the Mali Empire were no longer myths, but undeniable forces recorded across maps and historical accounts forever. In 1375, centuries later, the Catalan Atlas was created, showing the known world with extraordinary detail and medieval cartographic precision. There, in the heart of Africa, on the map, appeared a king seated on a golden throne, holding a scepter and crowned with unmatched symbolism of wealth. Beside the illustration, medieval scribes wrote that this king was the richest and most noble ruler in all the land because of the incredible abundance of gold in his kingdom. Mansa Musa had achieved something no ruler before him had ever accomplished, forcing the medieval world to recognize Africa as a center of civilization and unimaginable power. After returning from his pilgrimage, he invested heavily in building mosques, libraries, and universities across the Mali Empire. The most famous of these was Timbuktu, which under his patronage became one of the greatest centers of learning in the entire medieval world. At its peak, the Sankore University alone housed nearly 25,000 students from across Africa and the wider Islamic world. Mansa Musa did not simply accumulate wealth, he transformed it into knowledge, architecture, culture, and lasting institutions that shaped generations. He passed away around 1337, but unlike most rulers of his era, his influence did not fade with time or political borders collapsing around him. His legacy survived something far greater than empires or kings. It survived centuries, becoming one of the most powerful historical stories ever recorded. Today,
Economists estimate that Mansa Musa's fortune would be worth around $400 billion in modern value, making him the richest person in recorded human history.
But what made him truly legendary was not the gold he possessed, but how he used it to shape knowledge, culture, and the future of an entire civilization.
In an age where success is measured by numbers and influence, Mansa Musa forces us to ask a deeper question about legacy and what we leave behind. What are you building today that will still matter long after your name is gone and history has moved forward without you? If this story surprised you, imagine how many other forgotten empires and legendary rulers still remain buried beneath the surface of history, waiting to be rediscovered. History is not just what we are told. It is what we choose to uncover, preserve, and remember for generations that will come after us. So the next time you hear about Mansa Musa, remember, this was not just a king or a wealthy ruler, but a force that reshaped how the world understood power itself.
If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover more untold legends from the ancient world.